Hello, my name is James Hawkins, and I'm here with Healing Conversations. We thank you that you've arrived here at this place to take in this content, but I want to be responsible and just help you to recognize what experience you're about to take in. This is me and a group of my friends, colleagues that are talking about our reactions to Ahmaud Arbery's murder. And what we wanted to do was share that because I believe that there was a lot of pain and confusion that's just resonating from this. And oftentimes, what happens in moments like this, the humanity, the connection between us as fellow brothers and sisters, men and women of various ethnic groups, is that we lose the humanity of it. And we can argue content for days, we can politicize it, but I think that would be dishonoring to the loss of human life. And I also think that would be dishonoring to us as people. Because in places of pain, what we need is connection, not arguments. What we need in times of confusion is the ability to come together and process our stories and our pain together to help find some sense of hope and of healing. And that's what this conversation is about. It's about modeling for others about how we can connect in painful times, how we can have different conversations that isn't just about proving who's right, who's wrong, invalidating someone, or in some way avoiding hard places. And I found it as an honor to share that space with my friends, and I find it an honor to share that space with you as well. And so, with that in mind, we hope you enjoy. And we hope that you can also find hope and healing conversations with your community as well.
All right. So I want to go and get started and just thank everybody for their time and being willing to share. Definitely, we want to start off and say Happy Mother's Day to all the ladies attending. And even as we say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers here, we recognize that even in the moment that we're coming together, that this moment can have mixed emotions for for some moms right now, namely the mother of Ahmaud. Mm. And this is never what she expected on this Mother's Day, was to be grieving the death and murder of her son. And I'm sure it's probably hard to even grieve it, with it having so many connotations to it, waiting for justice for so long and waiting for someone to kind of acknowledge even that her son was murdered. And before we even get going with our talk, I'm playing it on the cuff here, so I know Joy can ride with me. Joy, do you think it'd be all right if you would say a prayer for our moms and definitely for Ahmaud's mother?
Absolutely. God, we thank you so much for this opportunity and just to have these conversations. And we pray right now for just mothers all over the world, God, who have lost someone, lost a child, and especially for Ahmaud's mom, God. I pray, God, that you would just be with her and give her comfort and give her peace. God, we do pray for justice, and we pray, God, that you would continue to be the blanket that just comforts her during this time, and every single tradition, even his voice, even his phone calls, if they used to text all the time, God, all the things that we just know as moms that we just look forward to when it comes to our children. I pray, Lord, that you would come and just be very real and very present for her and for her family. We thank you. We just praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Man. So I want to thank once again everybody for coming. And so just to set the tone, you've been invited into a space with a group of people who have been working together for a while now. We call our group Healing Conversations, because we really believe that many times in moments like this and what's going on in our nation is that we can get into all kinds of content arguments and political arguments, and we can get into this tit for tat, and then we wonder why we feel so disconnected. But this group of Healing Conversations really believes that if we can come together in vulnerability, even in the midst of hard emotions, whether it's fear, pain, anger, sadness, even just numbness, that if we can have vulnerable conversations, that's where healing and connection happens and powerful things happen in society. And what we know is, and I want to say it to you tonight, we're not coming saying we have it all together. and that we have it all figured out. We will make mistakes. There are things, we're not trying to say things to impress you. We're trying to be vulnerable and really share what's going on in our hearts, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our concerns. Because what we know is if we wait till we get everything perfect, then the world would just be scarily silent, because no one can get it perfect. And actually, when we worry about perfection and we get more scared of the mistakes than we do of the opportunities for connection, we can end up very isolated as people, because we know that these moments are loaded, and we'll talk about that. But the whole hope for us, and what we want to even model for you, is that we know that healing happens when we can have vulnerable connections. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is we're just going to share our hearts as brothers and sisters in this journey and to connect. Because as one of a colleague of mine who's really helped in this walk, her name is Sue Johnson. And Sue says that there are 3 key elements that every relationship has to be able to have. We have to be accessible to one another. We have to be able to respond to one another. And we have to be emotionally engaged. If we are not any one of those 3 things, then we will not be able to have a bond that is able to help us go through these kinds of hard times that test us. And so with this Healing Conversation group, I'm privileged to have with me Reverend Stephen Ivy of the St. James Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you, Stephen. I am also happy to have my colleague, Joy McGowan of the Josh Center and all the other great things she does. Joy, thank you so much for your heart and the gift you are to the community. And a friend and mentor who's been walking with me beside this and helping me shape these conversations is Ryan Reyna of the Joshua Center. Thank you, Ryan, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And why I trust these people to walk in these spaces with me is because they have been accessible, responsive, and emotionally engaged. My name is James Hawkins. I am also a therapist at the Joshua Center and a teaching pastor here at New Heights. And I just say all that to say there's many ways and many levels in which I engage this. And it's my privilege and honor to be here with all of you that are listening tonight as well. So before I start, I want to just say I want us all to take a moment and have a vulnerable moment together. And I want us to really not just listen to this talk. I want you to be able to feel this talk. And we're going to walk through the difficult emotions together as a group. So I want you to just, wherever you're sitting right now, if you could just begin to be able to maybe just still your heart and your mind, let your body just begin to relax into the seat that you're sitting in. And I just want to take a moment, and if for some reason you don't feel comfortable being able to do that, that's okay. If you just need to kind of sit tonight and just kind of just passively take it in, that's okay. But maybe your person says, I want to be in this, and I want to actively engage and be with them and walk them with it. Then we want to invite you to that too. But as you sit there, I want you to picture, when you saw the video clip of Ahmaud's murder, or when you heard the story, maybe you began to see it pop up on your social media sites. Maybe a friend texted you. Maybe someone called you. Not sure. Maybe you're going through a news site or something of that nature. Kind of when you were doing that, where were you sitting at? What were you doing? Just kind of get in that moment. What was going on around you? But then when you saw the video, or you read the headline, or you heard the news, what happened in your body? Like, what did you feel? What did you sense? Was it kind of like, just like your shoulders just drop? Did you just begin to feel like tears swell up in your eyes? Did you feel your fist maybe even just clench up? Like, not again, not again. Or maybe even just a pit in your stomach as you saw it, just shock. Maybe you just like, I can't believe it. As you see him fall to the ground. I just want to know, when you hear that this happened 2 months ago, 2 to 3 months ago, and that you're just not hearing about it, and you're like, what in the world? How are they not in this? That you feel that shock, maybe. I don't know. What was that? Thank y'all for being there. So what is that feeling you felt? But I want to ask one other question. And I'm going to use terms, and I'm not really a big fan of these terms, white, black, but they are categories in which, we create kind of these shortcuts to be able to identify people. But I do want to ask for my brothers and sisters that are listening that are white. Even as you hear that and you felt that in your body, can you even maybe just imagine what friends or family members, co-workers that are black or brown, can you maybe just take a moment to imagine maybe what they felt as they saw the clip or they heard it? And take that in, maybe try to walk in their shoes for a moment and just maybe, what would that feel like for them? And do you kind of notice a difference between the two? Between maybe it's just when it's kind of like you took it in just kind of from your own perspective, and then maybe when you're able to try it on for someone else, right? Thank you. But maybe even if you're a minority or you're black or brown, imagine just kind of like what it is even for our white brothers and sisters too, as they hear, is that as they enter into these spaces and they try and process and they reach out, maybe what it is like for them is like, I don't know if it brings up shame, guilt, just a freezing of like, oh my gosh, again, how am I going to reach out to them? I don't know what to say. I'm scared I'm going to make it worse. Ugh. Right. Thank y'all. I know that's a hard move to feel your own feelings, but then I know it's another thing, and it takes a whole lot of humanity to take a moment and pause and take in the feelings of another person that might have a different perspective than you. And I appreciate you for doing that with me. But then even as you feel that happen in your body, those different places, what's the story that kind of comes up? What's the story you begin to tell yourself? What are the thoughts that go through your head, and how you try and make sense of those emotions as they just resonate through you? I don't know if it's just like, I know, like just again, this looks like Trayvon all over again, or what's that that just goes through your mind? Who knows what it could be? We tell ourselves stories to try and make sense of things that are overwhelming to us. So that way we're not just kind of lost with our own emotions. We try and put it to a narrative to make it make sense, to order it. But then even with that story and even with all that content kind of those thoughts floating through you, what do you feel your body, what do you feel your soul move to do? Try and to do something with that energy that you felt in your body. Do you just feel yourself just slump down, just try and go away? Do you go run? Do you reach out for people? Do you move towards people to try and share it, to ask them how they're doing? Or do you find yourself just kind of go into a hole and just withdraw in to try and get some space to make sense of it in yourself before you reach out? I want to thank you for doing that. And why are we doing that? Because even as we get ready to go through, it's impossible to really feel with other people when we can't even be in contact with our own emotions and our own thoughts. One of my friends and mentors, George Fowler, who also is another person that really walks with me in this when we talk about this, he says, James, two people to really be able to work together and walk together in difficult times, they've got to be able to co-co. They've got to be able to co-regulate emotion. They've got to be able to co-create meaning together. And so, when we talk about co-regulate, I wanted you to actually feel the story in your body as you listen to us talk. So that way we can walk through it together, not just as individuals. We can walk through this as a collective. But then also it's how do we make sense? Not necessarily go back and try and be lawyers or the DA and try and go figure out Ahmaud's murder and death and how the legal system is supposed to work. But right now, even amongst us, how do we make sense of our shared humanity as we deal with this together? So thank you for lending yourselves and being in this experientially with us. We really appreciate that. And if at any moment it feels like it's too much for you and you need to just hit pause on it, you're not a bad person for that. That makes complete sense. Everybody has to do this in a way that works for them. So thank you. I know for me, when I heard about Ahmaud's death, I just immediately felt this sense of shock and hopelessness. And I just told myself, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter. Even though there's evidence, even though it looks so clear to me, And I began to feel fear. I began to picture the fact that even I live in a good community. I know my neighbors. I still will not run without my ID just in case I'm questioned about if I belong. That there was a long time I would not run without my wife being with me or knowing to be able to identify where I am. I love having a smartwatch so that way, even with my smartwatch, if I fall and hit the ground, it'll notify her if I take a hard fall and I'm not moving. And I'm not saying, and that just made me think about the ways in which sometimes I've become numb to how I protect myself in the situation that what Ahmaud went through. But what I did to protect myself in that place, I just shut it down. I just went numb. And I said, don't even think that anything's going to happen, James, because you'll be disappointed. So just protect yourself from feeling disappointed and don't allow yourself to get your hopes up. Well, that worked until my friend Stephen shared his pain and his vulnerability. And that shocked me out of it. Because while there's a way I could distance myself a little bit from Ahmaud's, because I don't know all of Ahmaud's family. I haven't had personal contact with him. So there's a part of it I could kind of almost push it away. And I almost feel a little bit ashamed for saying that's what I did to protect myself, is I kind of pushed it away. But then when Steve and someone I know his wife, I know his kids, I know his heart, we've shared meals together. My body couldn't stay in that numb state anymore. He made me have to feel. And it helped me grieve. He pulled me out of my numbness. And so I just want to take a few moments to just process with Stephen and how he reached out to the group. So Stephen, thank you once again, man.
Yes, sir.
So I know, Stephen, you got a lot going on. You're in the midst of a move. You're a minister. You work. You're bivocational. There's COVID going on. And so there's a lot of emotion that goes on. And here you are. You've always been trying to, manage your health and get in shape. And here you are planning to start running. You even join a running club, 30 and 30, right?
Yeah, man.
But here you are about to move to a new neighborhood where not everybody knows Stephen.
Right.
And you've been told, and you even reflect on for yourself, you've been told you're a large African-American male. Mm-hmm. And so now you see Ahmaud in his story, and then you begin to process the shock and the fear for you. And then that's when you reached out to the group. I just want to make space for you to kind of share your emotional experience when you first saw that happen.
Yeah. So, man, I honestly don't, when I think about my first experience, James, I honestly was probably like you, where when I heard about it, I was just like, man, it's happened again. Of course, it was hard to connect with that while still connecting or while going through this COVID stuff. And I don't even think I really understood or let the weight of this happen back in February. And here we are in May, just now hearing about it. So there was a lot that I probably pushed to the back burner. And one thing that I didn't share in the group was that while all of this was coming out, and y'all forgive me if y'all hear my background, I'm outside. But while I was looking at Ahmaud and this was coming to the forefront, I have been for the last 3.5 months processing my own grief with my uncle passing. And then that Monday night, really that early Tuesday morning when I get up at 3:45 or earlier to go to work, I got a text message from one of my friends letting me know that my mentor, who means the world to me, doctors had given him less than 24 hours to live. And finally, that Tuesday evening is when I got a text message that he passed. So all that to say, I'm processing major grief from people that have passed away. And then I'm thinking about this young Black boy that's been murdered, hunted down and murdered. And then I'm thinking about my own reality that my family and I are looking to move. We've looked at the neighborhood that we're moving to and all of that kind of stuff. And I felt this sense of anxiety, like, oh my gosh. And I've not ever felt this before because in my 13 years of living in Northwest Arkansas, I've always been pretty comfortable. When I first moved here, I moved with a family that I knew, moved from there, had roommates. was very familiar with this area for 5+ years. And so now it's almost like moving to a new place, and you wonder, kind of as you said, with when I worked at Walmart, my boss, one of my bosses, and he didn't mean any harm by it. Well, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm just gonna say the boss that I worked with at the time kind of told me that his words was, I looked like Kimbo Slice. If you don't know who Kimbo Slice is, Kimbo Slice is he used to be a backyard brawler and turned UFC fighter. And so he was one of those guys that was just, basically what my boss was telling me is, you look like a very big, aggressive black guy. And he said that to me several times. And so I've had this thought imprinted on my head for at least the last 2.5, 3 years. And so now my mindset was like, man, if I move, like, shoot, do I want to walk in this neighborhood? Do I want to run in this neighborhood? Like, what do I need to do? Even going to Walmart today, talking to a cashier, I almost feel like you have to be extremely nice, overly nice, so to speak. So there were a whole bunch of yes ma'ams, and I tried to over-articulate myself as I'm talking to this Caucasian lady at Walmart, and I could tell that her response to me, she was almost shocked that I guess I sounded somewhat intelligent or something. I don't know, because I looked like this. So I went to Walmart. I wore my little fitted cap, had my hoodie on early this morning, and so anyway, it's just a lot to deal with, a lot to process that I've been doing.
Yeah, I hear that. And I can hear, like, even as you keep going in this building, it's a lot. And it's just like this anxiousness that you even begin to feel. It's a lot of grief. It's a lot of change. But even look at it, now you're even trying to adjust and just carry this extra place of, I've got to adjust a little bit about how I carry myself because of how I'm perceived, which I think is one of the parts that really hit me about when I heard about Ahmaud's case. It's like, because he was a black guy in our neighborhood, right? Almost like, just that sense of you don't belong, So definitely. So just even feeling that sense of, here I go. What does this mean for me? I just even wonder for you, as you think about going to this new neighborhood and this new community and what that's like, and then you see Ahmaud, it's like, what is that like to even carry that to, like, kind of like, does my personhood belong, and how do I adjust myself to make sure I appear safe?
Yeah. So honestly, man, for me, this was a first. I've never felt the true anxiety that I felt when I sent y'all all that message. This was the first time that I've legit ever felt that way. And so for me, I'm sorry, I looked at a message. One of my buddies said, code switching takes a lot out of you. And honestly, the way I look at going to a new neighborhood, how do I cope with that? I do that, honestly, not for myself, because I know who I am, but I do it for the next black guy that's going to meet that white person, if that makes sense. So I'm talking to this lady very intelligently, dressed like this, because this, I guess, has an appearance that I don't know, but I'm talking to her in such a way so that the next person that she encounters, she won't have her bias won't get in the way, or her possible bias, let me say that. And so that's how I process it is, even moving, I've been thinking about this. So when we move, do I, because I'm a very friendly person, so do I go to the neighbor's house and knock on the door and introduce myself, or do I make sure that when we first move, I let my kids play out in the front yard so that everybody knows I'm a family guy, or how do I introduce myself to this neighborhood, to this new space? Do I sit outside and wait for a neighbor to come out and not stalking them or anything, but just, trying to be overly nice, so to speak? And these are the thoughts that I still haven't, I don't know. These are just the thoughts that I'm still kind of processing even now.
Yeah. And I want to appreciate that. I know in some way that we all might do that. I mean, Ryan is a friend of mine. Like, we were getting, before you even got on, Stephen, you're like, aren't you that really tall guy, that extra tall guy? In which I know, Ryan, even for you, you do a lot of, like, being very cautious of your body posture and your body presence, not to intimidate. So I know that that's one level. But if you catch this, it's like, you know, even for you, Stephen, what you're saying is just like inherently my African American skin, the color of my skin already puts a burden. And it's like, no matter what your size is. So even if it's another, because Ahmad, at least by the video, he didn't look like a huge guy. I don't know what, up
Right.
close, but it's just this sense of, I mean, we all know about, Eric Garner. He was a little boy in a park, right? And still a threat, still perceived as a threat. So that is a lot of energy. Even I hear you putting out about, like, even thinking collectively about your ethnic group as a whole, about trying to set this positive appearance, adjusting how you talk and dress and posture and those kinds of things. It's a lot of energy. But here's what I want to get back down to, just really kind of keeping it even now and trying to give a space for people to process their emotion. Because what I've liked about the Healing Conversations group is there's something about having a diverse group of people to process a story with, going to that Coco part again and co-creating meaning. There's some power in not just only sharing my story with other Black and brown brothers and sisters, but there's some power when I can turn to Ryan or to my white sisters as well, and to be able to share, like, do you see this too? Am I crazy? Is something wrong with me? Tell me you see this. It just gives me this sense I don't live for their validation, but it does say, okay, so it's not just us thinking this way. Other people see it too. So I want to ask you, Stephen, what made you feel like the Healing Conversations group was a safe place for you to be able to share?
So what made me feel it was safe is it was really the hope that we all share collectively. And so I say that because, and I know my wife is watching, but I wouldn't go to her and tell her my anxiety. And I know some people would say, man, that's bad and you should share that. But when the man in the house is uncomfortable and scared, I don't want to release that fear or put that fear on my family, so to speak. Y'all get what I'm saying? And so didn't want to go talk to her. Some of my friends the way they process, they're not where I am, so to speak. And so some guys are, like you said, James, are just numb. Man, this is the way it's going to be. You know, we just got to do what we got to do, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so really one of the only spaces that I knew I could come to and kind of share my vulnerability. And really, for me, when I share stuff like that, I need people to get in that space with me. Not try to counsel me, not try to give me both sides or whatever. I need people just that can say, hey, hold on, we're going to get in that space with you. And I think that was your response to me, James, when I sent that, was just like, hey, man, I just want to validate how you feel and get where you are. I want to be there with you. And that meant a lot. And so that's why I brought that there, because I needed somebody to get in the space with me, but I also needed people that could light that fire of hope for me. Because for me, I live in this weird tension of having hope that it'll get better, but also being a realist to say, man, I don't know if it's going to get better until Jesus comes back. And so I struggle with living in between those two, in those two tensions. And so sharing with the group really gave me hope. And I mean, look at what we're doing now. This is fruit from that conversation. And so it just let me know once again that I could share and be vulnerable and be open, and this group of people would sit in that space and something beautiful would come out of it.
Even Stephen, I caught your energy there right in that moment when you said, like, there was this expectancy in you that just told your body, like, this is going to be safe. This is going to be good. I can take it. I don't have to censor it. I can just share it. And you weren't even looking for someone to necessarily, like, to validate your content of what you said, to go through the legal case of of anything about it. You just said, it's like, I just need you to come alongside me. And even as you said that, your body just kind of did this thing, because what did you feel? Just for someone just to even type the words, hey, what you're feeling makes sense. And when I was telling you makes sense, I wasn't even telling you like the line by line of what you said. It was just your anxiety made sense. The fear makes sense. This is overwhelming. What did it feel just to have someone come alongside you in that place?
man, it felt like a burden lifted, but it also, man, it's better when you have somebody walking along with you, if that makes sense. And somebody that's just down for the journey. I don't know where we're gonna end up. Don't have all the specifics, but man, just want you to know I'm here. I understand. It makes sense. So it was for me, it was really powerful.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that, man.
And can I share this too?
Yes, you can.
So I saw, and God is really good. I know this is we're believers, or most of us, and hopefully those that are watching. So the Lord really always kind of shows up at the right moments. And so I think I sent it to you all as well. So not only did this group do something that helped me out, but then a couple of days later, of course, I was posting about running for a mod, and then I had a friend that's in North Carolina, just out of the blue, send me a text message and basically said, hey man, me and my wife, we're gonna be running. And when we post, that we're running and what we're running for, we want to say that we're running for people like you, for our friends like you. Of course, my friend was a white guy, and so he's saying, like, I want to post a picture of you and I, and we want to post other people. Is that okay for me to even post it for you? We don't want to be disrespectful, but we want to honor our relationship. And so the Lord just has been kind to me in that He's given me, he really lit that fire of hope for me.
Man, thank you. And see, look at what that did. It's like, now imagine if I invalidated your feelings, or imagine if the group just completely stonewalled you and just didn't respond to you. I just wonder even what that would do to your, because in a sense, so I'm gonna cheat here, Stephen. Before we did the first healing conversation class, I appreciate your honesty. You're like, I don't know what James doing. I ain't going. I know how these conversations go every time. They're just gonna tell me I don't have a right to be upset. There's no reason to be angry. There's no problem at all, and I don't got time for opening myself up again.
Yeah.
But look at what happens when someone finds out that someone can meet me in my vulnerability, and that if I can share my vulnerability and they meet the signal of the emotion that I had, that it then unlocks my body and says it's safe. And now I can go take risks. I can go do something good with that.
Yeah.
But if you don't get met in that place, then your body stays and says, no one's with me. I'm by myself. Stay in protective mode.
Yeah.
And in protective mode, we don't do great things. We don't have our full energy and ability there. And so we really kind of hedge our bets in the sense. So I want everybody to really catch, because I know I had made a post and in that group just kind of sharing, and I made sense of the anger and just saying, I get the anger. That anger is your hope. That anger is your way of just saying, hey, there's an injustice that happened right here. Please tell me everybody else sees it. It draws up all this energy. It moves you to maybe where, like, even where you might want to shut down and just be numb. That anger mobilizes you to push through that place. And some people were a little bit uncomfortable. There definitely, as people, Ryan can speak to this, people are uncomfortable validating anger. But when the function of that anger gets met, look what Stephen shifts to.
Yeah.
Hope. And I know that there are many minorities that feel like no one's ever met me in that place, and I've given up any hope of even expecting someone to meet me there. So that's part of why we even want to model this conversation, y'all. It's real. It's real. So Stephen, thank you for sharing, man. I appreciate you.
Yes,
in your
sir.
Heart. Joy, I want to switch over to you. Joy is the wife of I don't know. I call him Professor. I love Dustin. I call him the Professor. He's gifted, brilliant man. He loves the Lord. He loves society and culture and helping people. And he's a Black man, right? And even Dustin's lost a friend in the midst of all of this, in a big national case. And you have two strong young Black men that you're raising. I can't even imagine just kind of what even happens in your heart as you see this as a wife and mother. So could you just kind of maybe invite me into that space with you about what your feelings are and how this landed for you?
Yeah, I think definitely my fear is always surrounded around those three men in my life, my husband and my boys. I have a 6-year-old and I have a 4-year-old, and my 6-year-old wants to be a rocket scientist and looks up to every black man that we have around him. He wants to be like him, wants to be a rapper, wants to be a rocket scientist, wants to be a comedian. And I just love it. Um, Wants to do whatever daddy does, doesn't really understand what daddy does, but he wants to do what daddy does. Um, and being able to constantly see these images of black and brown bodies just being slaughtered in the streets, it only makes me think of them. So immediately when I found out about him, there was like just I felt very hot. Like physically was hot. And yes, that could have been anger, but it was also a lot of fear and anxiousness. I agree with you, James, that reading Stephen's message in that group made it even more real to me. And it was like, okay, check on my black friends because they are not okay. Um, and I need to make sure that I'm making space for them and I have space for myself. Um, and yeah, it was really difficult. It was really even trying to talk to some of my girlfriends about it. My black female friends, I had to first ask them. I had to ask them permission, like, hey, are you ready to talk about this? What are you thinking? And some of my friends were not ready. And I had to be like, okay. And I had to respect that and move back. Um, and so I think there's just this constant fear. I think even so Dustin, he's my husband, and on Saturday he went to go hang out with some friends. Um, and he was gone. I think no, Friday, because Steve, y'all had your call, y'all had your black guy call, like all there's a bunch of black men in Northwest Arkansas to get together and have this call together. And I was pushing him to do it, like y'all need to meet. And they met, and he was gone for a long time throughout the day. And I knew they were gonna meet. I thought he was gonna meet in the house because the boys were gonna be sleeping. He's meeting in the car. And so immediately my anxiety is amped up and I'm like, where are you? What are you doing? Why are you not answering my calls? He's like, Joy, I was on the Zoom call with the guys. You just disconnected the call. I was like, oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's like, are you okay? I was like, I'm just trying to make sure you're okay. He's like, I'm good, babe. I'm good. But even that moment of why am I so anxious? Because I think something happened to him. And I'm like, why are you sitting in the car? There were plenty of black men sitting in cars doing nothing who got shot, who got questioned. Like, so no, you can't just sit in the car. Get your butt in the house because I'm afraid for you. So I think there's like this immediate emotion of like one losing them. What would my life be like not to have my son? And because of something like this, would I be able to handle that? Would I be able to respond to that in a way that is respectful and full of grace and full of love and being able to just like anchor myself in something? And that's hard. And so I cannot imagine his mama right now, Mother's Day, her birthday, his birthday, and all these events. Um, this is my probably like my second or third Mother's Day without being close to my mom, physically close to her in the same state. Um, and this day I woke up tearful of I'm not close to her. I can't get to her. And maybe that's because of the whole pandemic and whatnot. Um, just wanting to make sure it's okay. But even more like, man, like losing them to something like this, I'm not sure if I could bear it.
Joy, I can even hear just like even as you finish that statement, I appreciate you. I can tell your body and your whole heart is fully on the line. Like even as you say it, there's pain even alive in you now. Like because it's like for a part of you, you're just trying to kind of hedge the bets. Like how can I keep safety? Because the idea of even losing this brings up a real personal grief. It's not just about Ahmaud and this out there. For you, it feels like your body saying like, no, this really can happen to you. There's been repeated experience after experience after experience that says no matter how well my husband or my boys behave, there's a story in me that says that someone else could get scared. And in their fear, it could bring on the worst possible fear that I could have, that I would have to do life without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it's often a thing of like raising my black boys of thinking of things that I was told when I was raised of, censor yourself. I think somebody mentioned this idea of code switching. Like you just get taught some of those things. And
Mhm.
now being my own woman and thinking like, I don't want to code switch. I want to be who I am no matter where I'm at. And then thinking like, I'm going to have to teach my boys both. They're going to have to know both. They're going to have to know because right now they're 6 and 4 and they're the 99th percentile of everything for their growth. And so they're going to be big, amazing Black men, but scary to some people. And so it is my job to raise them in a way that they know how to carry themselves, right? Like the
Yeah.
fact that I even have to think about that is hard.
Yeah. And I appreciate you for doing that. Even like when you said this, like, I think part of why we're doing this too, and I've been watching the comments over here, and it's been beautiful. Just to be in contact, not to lose contact with each other's humanity, right? It's so I just appreciate you even sharing that and just making your boys people to us. They're not just like, man, he's a boy that's looking for strong male figures. He wants to be, he's adventurous and wants to be he's a person. Ahmad was a person. And I think another point I want to bring up here is when you think about where part of what we're trying to do in Healing Conversations is we're also trying to help America heal from its attachment trauma. That's how I phrase it as a counselor. And you say, what in the world are you talking about, James? As therapists, we know that we have to do a good attachment history with all of our clients. We want to know what they've been taught to do with their emotions, who have been safe attachment figures, and what has ever happened in their life when maybe that safe attachment figure wasn't able to be there for them, neglected them, or maybe even hurt them. And we want to know about the patterns of what did they do to deal with that trauma or that loss, because we know that people aren't stuck in their past. But if we don't have these healing moments, these moments that tell our bodies, that tells our souls that we're safe, then we'll live in protection. And those protective functions, sometimes they become the trauma themselves. It's not just the trauma itself, but it's being left alone in our pain and not having people walk with us in our healing and our pain. And America has an attachment trauma, and that has been slavery, racism, Reconstruction. And what it's done is we've never really took a time. We may have apologized, but we've never done reparative work. And we know repair work in therapy is hard. It's long. It takes intentionality. And I don't really feel like America's done good repair work. We could do better because just apologizing doesn't repair. If I tell a husband, just apologize to your wife for cheating on her and she should be fine. No way would everybody out there's like, that's absurd. If you're a therapist and you tell that guy that they should fire you. Well, that's kind of been a little bit, and I want to be careful. That's been a little bit of, I think, our response is, well, we apologize. But what we know is, like what you're bringing up, even Joy, is this kind of collective trauma of, even though it didn't happen to me, we still carry the stories of Emmett Till, the Freedom Riders. We carry those stories in us because I carry the stories because we've had to always learn how to survive and that it's not safe. And so with Ahmad's death, I think what it does is it brings that trauma back to the surface. See, it's still going on. It's still things are different in America, but there are still some things that have not changed. Because what I think shocked some people was, for 2 months, they didn't do anything. And it could almost feel like, oh, now you're doing something because now it got out to the rest of the world. But it was almost like it could have felt like you were going to get away with this. And that's not okay, right? But anyway, thank you, Joy, so much for just sharing that perspective and just for people to come and walk in that, to share what that's like even for you to be in this space. I appreciate that. So Ryan, man, thank you for being in this. And I just want to say thank you to you. And I know that I want to be explicit, right? Ryan's always offered, said, James, whatever you need, I'll be there for you. I want to show up. But I've never really asked him because I know how Ryan and I talk off this camera. I know our conversations. I know he's shown up for me. I even know when this happened, he called and checked on me. He asked me how I was doing. We've had vulnerable conversations, and I know it's hard, but I it's like I want to protect my ally, right? In the sense of I know it's a risk for you, Ryan, and so I appreciate you walking into this with me. And I just really appreciate that, man. So I just even want to make space for you, Ryan, as we've been taking this journey, sharing childhood stories about race and just people, just being men growing up. What was it like for you when you first heard this news as well?
Yeah, I found out on Twitter and just sick, nauseated. Um, best metaphor I could think of is just like when you find out there's been a terrorist attack, when hundreds of people were killed in France or these horrific stories. That's how it kind of washes over me. So, multi-level grief for loss of life for his family, a lot of confusion. Like, what in the world? Citizen's arrest with a shotgun. What's happening? How can this be true? And then to find out it happened months ago, to find out that it looks like nothing was going to happen until there was outside exposure. That just feels sick. I guess a part of me hoped we were further along than this. And then at least in this case, to find out this kind of thing can still happen is just stunning to me. So, and then some helplessness around this. It did feel like or does feel like a terrorist attack. It's a murder, and then the weird sensation for me is that in this case, the terrorists look like me a little bit, at least the same skin tone. So that feels weird. So then just fear of the repercussions, further division, how to reach out in a way that makes a difference. All those things come to me all at the same time.
Wow. I don't know if you saw that on camera, Ryan, when you said that line about the part, like his skin tone looked like me, all of our bodies jerked back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was impactful. That's a validation.
Yeah.
Well, one, Ryan, thank you for sharing, man. Just being, just sharing just your experience. That's heavy, man. Like you said, like even the description of a terrorist attack, because a terrorist attack, it just bombards you. It just comes out of nowhere. And it's meant to do just what you talked about, promote fear, to intimidate you, to in some way immobilize you, overpower you. And that's what this experience, that definitely was a good metaphor to capture this.
Yeah.
And so I think why my body jerked back when you said the skin tone looked like me, I think that's a part I haven't taken in fully really with this. And I can know like for, Stephen and Joy and I, our stories do go towards Ahmaud because is a part where we identify with him. And so I can even imagine like what that felt like for you to say, wait, his skin tone looked like mine. And so that brings up like, how am I going to be viewed, repercussions for all of this? I don't know. That's something. And I don't know, even what did that feel like for you, even as you take that in, that hey, these guys look like me?
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, for sure. So helpless, some fear, I think the one who pulled the trigger, if I had my story right, was the younger male involved who literally looks like me a little bit, so that feels funny for sure. And, so how do I process that? How do my Black friends process that? How do I reach across and be part of the solution? Those are important questions that don't have easy answers, For me, usually I actually don't engage much, and I could get into why I don't usually, but unless you want me to, but
go ahead, man.
I think it's a weird process here, and maybe this is an excuse. And hopefully I'm doing it better. I'm here. I don't want to come across as, oh, I'm a white guy who's being fragile, but I also don't want to come across as if I think I really understand what Stephen's talking about. I mean, life can be scary for me as well. I've had really bad interactions with police, but never because of my skin color. Right. So you can get into the conversation around privilege, and I'm happy to do that. But anyway, in this case, I posted something on social media pretty quickly because to me, in a case like this, to not say something, to be seen that I'm complicit somehow or that I don't care was too much for me. So I posted things on Facebook, and one of my good friends I played ball with growing up jumped on with me, and we had like 50 comments back and forth that were good. He thanked me 3 or 4 times for reaching out. He said it meant a lot to him that I said something, which was nice to hear. But then it's also like, man, have I not done a good enough job speaking up And what does that say? So just trying to wrestle with that tension.
Man, that's big. I appreciate even that duality, that dilemma you find yourself in. Like you said, I don't want to be so fragile to where I can't show up, but nor do I want to show up and act like, or in some way, like I've got it all understood and I've got it all together. I appreciate that. That's a fine line to walk in. And I appreciate even doing this tonight, because what the big thing for us, as we've talked, is people of good intent. We don't want them to be able to be silent. And there are ways in which God has given us each different levels or different ways of influence and ability to speak into this. And so for you just to be even to lend your voice, that speaks in a different way than if Stephen or Joy or I say it. And then when we all speak to it collectively, especially from a place of shared connection, I think it definitely carries a whole lot of a different weight to it as well, too.
I appreciate you saying that, James. I know there's probably a lot of white people listening to this, and sometimes we may get the sense that it's the opposite. Maybe I'm not wanted to be heard from, and I don't make that as an excuse. Just I think it's important that we push into this somehow, even if we don't have easy answers.
Yeah. And, and what I love, what Stephen said, what I like about Healing Conversations, everybody's anger and pain and the different reactions we have that make sense. From the person who wants to kind of push and attack to get their point across, it makes sense, because usually under push and attack is, I can't trust that if I just say my truth or share my experience that you'll really be there for me. So I've got to add a little extra oomph to it to really make sure that my point can get across.
Right.
But then from the person who goes into this kind of avoidant place, who just kind of withdraws, they also, there's that move makes sense, because that avoidance is this sense of, well, if I turn into it, it's already like a ticking bomb. And if I mess with this thing, I could really blow the whole thing up. So what I'll do is I'll just pull away and just hope that this whole thing just passes over, and then I'll re-engage. Yeah. Right. So both of those moves make sense,
That's not my style usually, but I felt it coming onto this tonight. I'm like, what if I say something stupid? Yep. I'm a verbal processor. I usually say something before I think it through all the way. So there's that fear too, but the cost of not coming forward is way greater than even if I did make a mistake. So.
Yeah. And so I'm going to transition that one into a term we've been talking about for Ryan. Loaded attunement, just what you said. These moments are loaded with potential. Trust me, every time I've ever done one of these talks, somebody gets mad at me. But there's also, while I sometimes let someone getting mad at me, and let me be fair to them, because you might be listening, you've been one of those people that got mad at me before. That's okay. I know, but what I know for them is it shocks them, because I think the term you said a moment ago, because I'm talking about things about people that look like them. And that's hard to make space for that. I remember Tony Evans in his book, Oneness Embrace, he says, what do you think it's like for the white kid that goes to school and in history class, they learn about John Bevere, or they learn about all these things, and they learn about the heroes that all look like them. And for brown boys and brown girls, all they learn about, usually about people that look like them, mainly is slavery. And they'll get MLK. They might get Booker T, but it's just real quick. So I liked how he says this for the white boys and girls. It's your ancestors are heroes, and that's what we do in America, right? Your ancestors are heroes. And for the brown boy, brown girl, it's my ancestors are less than. They're slaves. They didn't really make contributions. They're not heroes. And so we know that we do that collectively as people. We just do that. We identify with teams that are in our region because we feel like they're a part of us. They carry something for us. We identify with people that look like us, that come from the same region, that have same accents as us. Redheads identify with each other. Us bald brothers got to hold it down for each other, right? We do these things because it does give us a sense of belonging. But then what about when that belonging has negative connotation and it hurts and it brings up shame and guilt in my own body? And then when somebody like Stephen wants to talk about something that brings it up, of course I might go into avoidance for very good reason, right? Because I don't want to be seen as that monster like that person, right? So I don't know. I just want to make space for that. So anyway, loaded attunement, Ryan.
But then when I do that, I've left you sitting there, right?
Yep.
And that implies the worst message possible, that I don't care, or I don't see it, or you're even less safe than Yeah, so it's a vicious cycle if we're not careful.
Because then if Ryan does that move and he leaves me and I'm getting the signal that he doesn't, like, you know what, maybe I just need to say it a little bit stronger. I need to say a little bit louder. I need to put a little extra oomph on it to let him know just how bad of a person he's being right now. And then I can go into this place of, Ryan, you don't care. You will never care. And I don't think you have a caring bone in your body. You're a horrible person. Right? So then is any way is that going to say, Ryan, turn back towards me? Or even does that, for me, I guess it's not even about winning you over. I think part of it is what I love about what Stephen and what he shared. I also don't want to dehumanize my own pain. So what I love about what Stephen did, it wasn't this pretty neat package of let me clean it up for everybody. It was real, but it was honest. It was like, this is what's happening in my heart. Period. That's what it was. He was like, I have fear. I have anxiety. This is not right to me. It doesn't sit well with me. And he was inviting us into his own, like, and that's just so humanizing. He honored his own pain. He could have went off into some political tirade, or he could have pulled up every judicial case that has never been whatever. And then if he never talked about the pain, and then all I do is I meet him and talking about the content of what he brought up, but then it'll never meet the signal. He'll still feel like you don't get my pain, but he never talked about it. Right. So I'm not saying everyone has to do this perfectly right, but that's what drew me into what I appreciate about you, Stephen, is you come and you share your pain. And you just like, and I loved how I know Stephen loves the Lord, but he's like, this ain't one of those just tell me to pray about it moments either. Because literally it's like, I need you to respond to me as a brother. Don't just push me to the side. I need you to respond to me. That's so vulnerable to ask for what you need in the midst of your pain. How easy is that for us to do, Ryan, as people? Ask for what you need in the midst of your pain. That's real easy, right?
If people did it, we'd be out of a job, man.
Okay. Oh man. Well, I'm going to keep dragging this on, but what I do want to get ready to share tonight, and Stephen, if you got anything you want to say, man, you can jump right on in.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, so I wanted to say it just, when you said that, it made me think that's another reason why I went to the Healing Conversations group, because I didn't want that. I'm not going to call it pseudo spiritual, but it's almost pseudo spiritual. I didn't want that. I didn't want to hear Christianese, because like you said, I'm a preacher. I've been in the church all my life. I know what the Bible says. In that moment, I didn't need another church talk, God talk. Just be encouraged, brother. I didn't need that in that moment. I needed, just folk that could hop in that space. And so I appreciate it. I will say this too. I know we see the comments on Facebook. I got a text message from another gentleman, basically just committing, and I didn't get a chance to read it all because I wanted to be with us, but I did glance at it for a moment. And I don't know if he's on here, but I did get that text message where he was just offering himself to be an ally, another white gentleman. And that means a lot. My brother, he's like a mentor to me, DK Hammonds. I think he's still on here. But he said something to me the other day. I'm giving him his credit that I told him I wasn't gonna give him. But he was talking about how we all need allies. The movement needs allies, advocates, and activists. And that all three have a place and all three are important in their own right. And so I thank God, Ryan, for you being an ally, and for those, if there are, and not really if, but there are other white brothers and sisters that if you all have some sketchiness about what to say, honestly, just say it, especially when you show yourself to be an ally. Because even if, Ryan, you said something that was off, as an ally, I would never put you out there and say, man, this dude is crazy. What I'm going to do is pull you to the side and say, hey, man, thank you for being there. You had this one thing kind of off. Let me help you. But never be scared. And that's not to you, but that's just to anybody that's saying, hey, I'm sorry, y'all, my kids.
That's all right.
But that's for anybody that says, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, you just show yourself to be a friend. And I think the rest will naturally fall into place.
Good.
So I'm going to jump in on that real quick and say the reason why it's not, you didn't want someone to tell you the gospel. You needed to see it. We need to live it. And part of, you've heard me say about Healing Conversations is before the fall, we existed in unity and connection. There was no strife or bitterness between us as humanity, which I know it wasn't all of us, but that's the way it was originally designed.
Yeah.
And so when we show up with each other in real human flesh with real feelings and vulnerability, that's restoration.
Yeah.
That's things being made right, visibly, tangibly, not just talking about it. Right. So that's why I think it meets a function. That's how we were designed. We can't beat God's design. That's one of Ryan's quotes all the time. You can't beat God's design. And we're designed to share our vulnerability and have people respond to us in our vulnerability.
Yeah.
So thank you, brother. Thank you for jumping in there. So Ryan, I think what I want to close out with is this ability to help people make space is when you talked about this term loaded attunement. So what do you mean when you talk about loaded attunement?
Yeah, that's something that you and I kind of came up with in the context of if I'm understanding what you want me to say here, of people from a majority background trying to relate to people from a minority background or a marginalized background, and I don't know what exact words to use, but that can be loaded, in terms of different expectations, different language, different assumptions, to the point where sometimes, I hate to use the word we, but we might hesitate, and, or even take a position. I know a lot of my friends that will say things like, I'm colorblind, and the intent is, I think, good, right? That's a great goal to reach for, but the problem is it's not true. And we live in reality, and the inadvertent message that sends in those moments is that they're not responded to, not cared for, not acknowledged, even unsafe once again. So it's loaded sometimes to engage in a way that's helpful, and yet it's also loaded with incredible opportunity, because if people if the terrorists look like me, and then I can have an experience that's healing with you, then I've done a real healing work, and that's because Black people cannot solve this and white people cannot solve this. It's something we have to do together. And so that's what's so loaded with so many opportunities. I actually learned that from, I'm 6'6" and about 265 pounds. And so I wrote my dissertation working with young women who were horrifically sexually abused. And so they were like, is he the worst therapist for them or the best? And the answer is both, actually, because if this traumatized person can experience someone large like me as being safe, as being protective, then that really heals that wounded place in a different way. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what we're talking about with loaded attunement. It is tricky at times. I don't always know what people want to hear. I talk to some people, that they're pretty easy to talk to, and other people, for very good reasons, are pissed. They're like, I don't want to talk. Do it differently. I'm like, I get that makes sense. I can honor the anger. There's just not always easy things I can do to prove right in that moment that I'm safe. So there's all these loaded pieces, but I think it's even more loaded with opportunity, because I don't think historically people have been willing to do the work to talk about hard things, and to not just talk about, but step out together and sort of fight to protect ourselves and protect our families. It's kind of like Joy mentioned, and my friend Philip the other night on Facebook. To me, I feel bad about all of it, but the part that really is heartbreaking for me is when my Black friends talk about how scary it is to send their kids out into the world. I think parenting is the scariest thing on the planet anyway. And so then to think about, how much more terrifying it is to send your Black child out in the world, that to me is just heartbreaking. And I don't know, what is it? The stat says if a Black kid is 7 times more likely to be involved with violence. And to me, it doesn't matter, Black or white. It just the fact that your kids are in more danger, that's just terrifying. And so I want to do everything I can to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this, Ryan, but back however many years ago it was now, when you said, the thing I'm not so worried about, James, now, things aren't, you didn't say this way, but you said what I'm concerned about is 2 to 3 generations down the road, where will my great-great-grandchildren be looking down the scope and your great-great-grandchildren be looking down the scope at each other? That's what I'm concerned about.
That's right.
And if that doesn't want to motivate you to do some work, right?
And you can see it playing out, the very things that we're doing a lot of times as a culture, maybe trying to make it better might be making it worse. And so we you and I happen to be studying these processes and trying to find a way to have a dialogue which moves us closer together as opposed to further apart. But we have to learn from history. If this was an easy solution, it would have been solved a long time ago. And so that's exactly right. I think we all have a responsibility, and I think it's my job, our job as people of the majority to take a larger share due to inequality, due to historical inequality. But I do think both sides have to be doing something so that future generations, we've got to find a way that this doesn't keep happening.
Yeah.
And how long can we stay together if this continues to happen?
We can. And I love what you and Stephen both did something similar, where Stephen, even in how he carries himself, it's like, I'm thinking about the next Black man behind me and how I'm engaging with you. Now, I know that could get into a hard place, a funny place, and it can just feel like, does Stephen have to lose a part of him in order to do that? Well, no, we don't want it because it's not healing. If Stephen has to pretend to be somebody else, then that doesn't help with authentic healing. But I get what he's saying, though, right? But even I like what you said too there, Ryan. It's not just about me and how am I doing. It's also like I have an opportunity here to move towards healing and restoration by you having an encounter with me. Because I think that's where many people get stuck on Black or white side of feeling like, well, I can't fix the whole thing. I didn't do it. Well, but you do have an opportunity for who you are as a person to give someone a different experience. And I think that's why I like this group of friends in the community that God's given me in this Healing Conversations group. It's not that's because everybody jumps to believe me, because I'll say this for me. If people just automatically jump on my side, oh, you're right, James, they suck and this and that, I don't really rock with you that well. I need authenticity. And so even someone that disagrees with me, if it's from a place of, I'm just confused, James, I don't know, I don't understand, but I don't see it that way, but I get where you're hurt, I can rock with that. I can trust that. Those are the people I'll talk to, because I don't want you just to make me feel right. I really want to co-create meaning. Help me understand this. Help be with me in this place. So the fact that you and both Stephen, like, you're taking like this, you're individuals and you have to own your own space, but you recognize that the moves you make carry larger implications for the good or for the evil. And imagine if each one of us, that's the part of hope I think we can take away from this conversation. Imagine if each one of us just says, no, I can't fix everything. But what I can do is I can take the opportunities I'm given. And yes, it's a loaded moment where it's loaded with, I hope I don't go in and I say too much or I say too little. And what if I say the wrong thing? But also there's great opportunity. Not opportunity that you've got to be stuck in shame and guilt, or opportunity that you've got to be stuck in being a victim. But there's this opportunity that if I move into this vulnerably, that maybe I will have an experience of feeling connected with someone in a way I never felt before. Or I have the opportunity that through our relationship and how we connect with each other, that it creates a different experience, that then it can be multiplied. And that's what I've loved with the Healing Conversations group. And I keep saying that it's not us. I know there's many other organizations doing the same thing in the same work. But once again, while we're doing this talk tonight, I hope what you got to see was each one of us share and respond. And you can even see our bodies on this camera respond when different people said things, because we're taking in each other's experience. We're not just planning our next counterpoint. We're connecting with each other's humanity. And that's a beautiful thing. And our communities change when we're able to connect. And so I just want to thank each one of you for lending your time, your energy, your stories, and your hearts to this conversation for a group of people that you may never ever see their faces. But for those of you that shared in this place and you allowed your bodies to be impacted by the stories of my friends here, I want to say thank you for that. And I just pray God's refreshing over you. And I pray that you have in some ways been challenged, because a new thing I'm working on now with George is we need to learn how to embrace challenge, because in the opportunity is in the challenge. If we stay out of the challenge, then we also lose the opportunity. And that's a sad, sad thing. Any relationship, we're talking about ethnicity tonight, but it's the same thing for your families. It's the same thing across gender lines. It's the same thing across denominational lines. That when we can step into those places of challenge, the tension is, that's where the bang for the buck is. That's where the real opportunity for life transformation and healing and restoration is. And so we just want to say thank you. Thank you to the panelists once again, and thank you to everybody listening. Yeah, hey, Reverend Ivy, can you pray us out?
I'd be glad to. Well, Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we've all had together. Thank you just because, Lord, you do all things well. This conversation, things that were lifted up, God. And I know, Father, that you are working even behind the scenes in our hearts, in our minds. I thank you, Lord, for transformation that you're causing this conversation to have. And Father, I don't just pray for those that are on tonight, God, but if the video stays up, God, I pray for those who will watch this video. And I pray for all of those who we will encounter after this video, Lord God. I pray that we have grace for those who need the grace. I pray, God, that we would have patience for those who need patience. We would have understanding for those who need understanding. That, God, you would help us be conduits of your love. Help us all, God, to see you in each other. You made us in your image and your likeness. And so let us honor that part of humanity, Lord God. Thank you that you make us better. Thank you that we'll be better. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Before everybody leaves, as another way just to create a time for the community to come together and have a shared experience, we are planning to hold a vigil for Ahmaud. Well, not really just for Ahmaud, but just really a vigil for all us to come together in this moment and to, in a sense, to share. And this vigil will be held, I believe, and my team tell me if I get this wrong, on the 15th. All right, coming up on the 15th, it will be held in Christian Life Cathedral parking lot at 7:15. We will still be practicing social distancing. So it will be, you'll be able to pull up in your car, and we hopefully will be able to, through technology, be able to run it through the radio into your car. And it'll just be a time where we come out, we share a word, there will be some music, there'll be some prayer, but it's a way of us as a community coming together saying, we're not alone. You are not alone. You can also be able to find out about events by just liking our Healing Conversation page, and you'll be able to know about the videos there. You'll also be able to hear about when we have other Healing Conversation classes and events here on Facebook. So we're definitely in the planning part of that. But once again, the vigil will be the 15th, starting at parking at 7:15, and we'll try to end by 8:30 at Christian Life Cathedral here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So y'all, thank you so much once again. Have a good night.
You as well. Thank you, man. Love you. Love you guys.
Hey, y'all panelists, y'all stay on. I'm kicking everybody else out.